Yeah.
Cochlear implant. Special meeting / workshop of the Clear Lake City Council, Thursday, November 4th, 2021 shall come to order. First of all, thanks for all being here bright and early this morning. Right now I'm going to ask a motion to approve the agenda, and then I have a little statement in between here, and then we'll move forth. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Dana, seconded by Mark, that we approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Just to a point of procedure here, on each item that you see on the agenda, following the statement what the item refers to is the name of the council person who would start or lead the discussion on that, as it continues all the way down through item number 8. Let's be concise and to the point in our discussion, and if there needs to be any further analysis of each of these, at a later time, I'll simply ask for a head nod on all these. We cannot vote officially at this particular workshop. Mr. Callahan, you had a statement you'd like to make?
Yeah, I thought I'd give a little background on the concept of workshop in Clear Lake, at least during my tenure. In my early years on the council, scheduled workshops for 30 minutes before the regular meetings were not frequent but common. These gave the council an opportunity to discuss items such as potential problems or projects which haven't risen to the level of an agenda item. This allows group input to instruct administration to create a plan for future council action. Our regular meetings can have lengthy and detailed agendas, which seem to make a workshop with no action taken a good venue for discussion of new items. The workings of our city government many times take careful and detailed planning, but whatever the issue is, it starts with an idea and a discussion.
Thank you. And now we'll move to item 3, discussion regarding golf carts. That is permit fees, safety restraints, etc. And this will be led by Gary Hugie, Ward number 3. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if fellow councilmen read your reports that Pete puts out in your packet. I assume everybody scans them. I do. An alarming fact that's pointed out on this is golf carts. We presently have 387 golf cart permits right now, registered, and 103 UTVs. That's 490 vehicles running around our little community. Oh, I'm sorry. At this point, I think maybe we should think along the lines of capping out at a limit of what we're going to allow. It's a lot of vehicles running around. The next item is the permit fees. They're currently at 25. I don't know if that's enough money to have administration officers involved in registering all these or not. I would like Pete Roth to get back to the council, and possibly we may have to raise those fees from 25 to maybe to 50 or 35, whatever. But I'd like you to get back to the council on that, if we're covering our costs. Safety restraints. We've been through this how many times, I don't know. There are children riding on the back of these carts all over. We've all seen it. The golf carts drive down the street like they are a vehicle, a big car. They don't move over to the side like they're supposed to. I would like the rest of the council to consider requiring a safety restraint for children 10 and under on these golf carts. And that's all I really have to say about golf carts right now.
Thanks, Gary. Anyone else like to add a few words to that?
I'll just weigh in briefly. I too am very concerned about the young children riding on the back of these. You know, many times there's a very impatient driver following behind a golf cart in a vehicle, and if a child were to fall out, or even the concept of an inattentive driver running into the back of the golf cart, I think that would put the child at jeopardy in a big hurry. So I know there's, from what Chief told me a while back, there's no state ordinance on anything like this, but I have seen some of these golf carts with restraints for people in the back seat, and I know it would be a little added expense, but and many parents are very responsible with this, some not so much. So you know, in the For What It's Worth department, I think it's worthwhile consideration.
Any other comments?
Excuse me. Along the lines of the permitting, does it make sense to do a 2-year permit instead of annual? If Mike would look into that, might help a bit.
Any other comments, council members?
Good idea.
Yes, Mayor, real quick on this issue. Chief, do we have a staff recommendation regarding the issues that Councilman Hugie raised in terms of the permit fee, safety restraints, and a cap on permits?
We've been talking with the city administration about that and some other things, but I think we'd be a little premature to kind of say that, you know, we need to look at the option with resident, non-resident, you know, type of fee structure, because we do have a lot of people that come in for a couple weekends and, you know, trailer their golf cart in and then trailer back out, so that's something that we would look at. We've been talking with Scott about that, and the mayor. And then with the seat belts, you know, safety belts are a great symbolic gesture to retrofit something on a golf cart, but golf carts are not, I mean, they're not designed to be on, I mean, they're designed to be on the golf course. Our only, I think, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong behind me, but I think our only injury we've had on the golf cart has been on the golf course itself because someone was not operating correctly, I believe. You know, when you retrofit a seatbelt for a golf cart, you have one bench seat. You have one big, long click, you know, so how are they sitting properly? There's no shoulder restraints, it's just a lap only type, and there are some forces that can work on that also negatively. They stop quickly, someone nudges them from behind, there's no give to do that. They do travel at low speeds, so that is a plus for them. They're not doing more than 20 miles an hour. But again, like I said before, every time we have these discussions, if this department really just enforces the council's will and expectation, they need to do that. I would council wrong. But I mean, we have a law that limits the number of people per seat. You know, we have addressed some issues where there's been 5 people on the front bench seat. We've addressed that when we see it. You know, our law is written so that if I write a ticket for a golf cart, you lose your permit almost automatically, so then I didn't have to come to the council to appeal that. So there'll be some issues if we start really enforcing that, but it would almost, you know, there would be some more administrative costs on top of that too. And we are still working through this city ordinance update, you know, totally. So we have some room that we can actually update those codes as well in the city council. So I would still like to get with Scott and Mayor and kind of talk about what our actual costs are before we, you know, throw out a number of research. That makes sense.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I share the concern regarding safety. I want to make that clear because I think these have become very popular. I think golf carts and UTVs are an important part of our tourist community. Lots of people enjoy them. I think it's very convenient for people to get around. I guess one other question I would have of you, Chief, is, you know, it sounds like, even though the safety belt issue sounds like a safety measure, but it sounds like that also comes with a risk profile that those could actually be dangerous as well in different ways, well, rollover, or could you speak to that just briefly?
You know, I'm not a crash dynamic, you know, expert, but you do have forces at seatbelt. If you don't wear your seatbelt incorrectly, if I wear the shoulder belt underneath my armpit in the car, and I get involved into a crash, I'm not pre-positioned correctly to take those forces, airbag deployment, that type of stuff. If I'm in a seatbelt and I'm a 6-year-old, how is that really holding me in there? And it's not, because the aftermarket seatbelts or the golf carts that are coming out with seatbelts are really made for that entire bench. So almost like a ride, you know, you just get buckled in and kind of just keep seated in there for any bumps, not a side-to-side or a rear-end, you know, collision. Basically, with our ordinance, it's written with the safety flag and the SMP triangle, the mirrors, and we make it as safe as we can. And also no driving after sunset, you know, so that also helps people see that. And again, we have not had a single incident on city streets since we've enacted the. Again, I want to correct, we've had a golf course since I've been here. When I first got here, I could go from my house to a golf course and back, period, with no inspection, no nothing. Now we've allowed it just to go from point A to point B as more of a convenience. And Gary is right, we went from 184 to 268, 393 permits over 2019, 2020, 2021. Still have not had a single incident crash or other than we do get complaints on young drivers or people parking over.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And yes, like you say, the popularity of these has certainly grown. I think I would just add that if there's any issue that you feel regarding safety for golf carts, UTVs that we should address, I think all of us are very open to dealing with that. So if there's any recommendations that our staff or Scott wants to bring forward, we will certainly listen to that. I think it is a concern for the young people, but it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, Chief, that the current approach we have is working.
Yes, yes, if I have to generalize it, but
Yeah.
like Gary said, it was just one incident where it was
Sure.
bad, and again, we got to just stay on top of the making sure people are using it.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess I'll wait for any staff recommendations on this, Mayor, but at this point, I would not support a cap on permits, or absent a rationale for raising the fee, I wouldn't support that either. Thank you.
So is there a consensus that we have the chief do some further research on that and bring it back to council to such that we may act on it at a regular meeting?
Definitely. I'd like to make one last comment. In light of the chief's comments on a rear-facing seat belt, I might suggest that another option might be to add language. He's already got some limitations on number of people per seat. possibly we could put some language in there indicating that if a child under a certain age were in the rear-facing seat, they had to have an adult beside them.
Any further discussion? Okay. Chief, is that fine recommendation?
Yeah, we'll
Well-
point out, Mr. Mayor, that, with the new advent of the new EVs, the electric vehicles, and then the new, we're gonna have a dealership right over here across the street that's gonna, I believe, sell street legal golf carts that will have a license plate, and that is governed by state law. They can drive anywhere they're allowed to by state law, so that, don't get confused with the permitting that we have for golf carts. These golf cart, there's a couple running around now, but if they have a license plate, then they are, nothing we can do about that in the city. But those will become more popular.
Okay. So we'll await for further action on that at a later regular meeting time. Could, Scott, could you pass that microphone to Chief so when I doubt that we heard anything to us. Thanks. Okay, item number, item number 4, discussion regarding possible noise ordinance. Again, Mr. Hughey.
The reason I'm bringing this up, we've had some citizens a couple of meetings ago come and complain about music after hours, outside music down by the surf area. And then also a business owner complained, claiming they've lost business. I'm not looking to see that we have a noise ordinance that covers the whole city. In other words, I don't want to see a noise ordinance. You can't start your lawnmower before 8 o'clock, or motorcycles, or cars, or trucks, and all that. I think and this is going to fall back on police, on Chief Roth. Research out some way we can isolate these businesses that do have loud music at night. Now, I don't know what that ordinance is. Maybe it's a point of saying at 9 o'clock you have to go back inside, shut up, and quiet down, or 10 o'clock. Whatever will work. That's basically where I'm going with this, and this needs to be researched out, because we've had people approach the council at council meeting. And if you could get back to the council again on what your recommendations would be, like it'd be nice if it would take care of itself, but it doesn't look like it's going to. And we have more than one establishment doing it. I don't know, Bennett, if you've had any calls on down by the water treatment plant.
Not this year.
Not this year, yeah. But in the past, there's been a problem down there too. But they want to work with people, and that makes a difference.
Actually, that situation's developed very well, and we
Yeah.
have a lot of people.
Well, they're cooperating.
Yes.
But anyway, that's where I'm going with. We've got residents, they pay big taxes down there. Obviously, the hotel pays big taxes. We've got to do something. Let's get prepared anyway, if it doesn't self-heal.
Any further comments on that item?
Just as a thought on that,
I think perhaps, these situations that you raised, Gary, are, and you're correct. I mean, I think we have to address it, but I think we could do that perhaps with a private meeting like we did with this other situation. I think from what my understanding in the past has been with a noise ordinance, it's just incredibly difficult to enforce and has had no support here in the past, if I remember this correctly, because I know it has come up in the past. But so perhaps we could address that, in a different way. Just my thought. Thank you.
And you are right. Bennett, it has come up in the past. We don't need to go down that road, and at that time, the council didn't feel it was necessary. From listening to the residents that showed up, they tried talking to the owner, and no cooperation whatsoever. Absolutely none. So I just think we need to get prepared. for down the road. And if the chief will check that out, what we can do, appreciate it.
I think that the reference to the establishment down there by the water treatment plant is a good example of how things can be worked out, because
Yeah.
I do believe, Bennett, you sent me a copy from a resident at a nearby location down there, I think, for the place that Mr. Hughey's referring to, that thought, hey, this is a town where we like entertainment, and that doesn't bother us at all. So there was two competing so-called comments there. So.
That's correct, Mayor. That's exactly right. And we worked that out privately with the folks in the neighborhood and the particular business owner. And again, I've spoken to the business owner several times since then, and they've been very appreciative of how that was handled by the city and the residents that live near there. So,
Right.
yeah, I would recommend we adopt a similar approach with the business owner here. So, thank you.
Comments on that? Okay. Move to number 5. Discussion on changing speed limit on Highway 18 from 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour from McDonald's to Fairway. Once again, Mr. Hugh.
Wonderful. Boy, this is my show today.
This is your
I live on the north side of the highway, and I cross that highway 7, 8 times a day, as well as Dana probably does. And you sit at the intersection of Buddy Holly or 8th, and the traffic's going by there exceedingly fast, especially these truckers. With the new coming of Hy-Vee, we're obviously most likely going to have to make some signal modifications along the route there somehow. Why don't we at this time approach the DOT and ask if we can lower that speed limit from, say, McDonald's to up the Fairway down to 35 from 45? I think it would be possible. They'll want to do a study on it, the DOT. We're going to have to go by their recommendation and what they decide anyway, but I think we should approach them with that idea. That might help in the modification on the traffic signals, if need be. That's why I'm bringing it up. I've had a lot of calls from people in fields going, oh, we're going to be jammed up, we won't be able to get to work, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. We know that. But, again, let's approach the DOT with some thought there a little bit.
Any other comments? If you go back in the archives, I do know that perhaps 25 years now, and that's not now, I understand that, but this was brought up then by City Administrator Tom Lincoln at the time, and I do believe DOT did a study, and they came up with the fact that 45 miles per hour was the safest speed limit at that time along the particular stretch that Mr. Yuki was talking about. So perhaps in the study of the DOT, if we ask them to do that, this may come up again. Correct. We have a few more establishments along there, and perhaps a few more people. I don't know, Mr. Flory did a study once about that there's the same number of people that go east and west on Highway 18, 122, if you will, as go north and south on Interstate 35. I think it's what, 14,000 or something? That figure came up. So yes, there's a lot of traffic there, and safety, of course, is our first responsibility. And so we'll all look into that if that's all right.
Well, we've got, just to, shut up. We've got, Hy-Vee's going to have an in and out to the highway. Over by Thrifty Drug, there's an in and out. Fairway has an in and out on the highway. So you got 3 right now, in and outs.
Yep, as I indicated that. And I think this study came about because of a fatality on that corner.
Correct.
That's what caused it way back when. So, yeah, thanks. Good comments. Number 6, discussion on future Park and Recreation Advisory Board. At-large council member, Mr. Callahan. Welcome, Mike.
I just brought this up for a couple of reasons. Probably the most important is over the course of the last several months, our rec department has taken on a dramatic new look due to the rec center, and we're really excited about that. And So I think the discussion previously had suggested that we were no longer going to have a Parks and Rec department necessarily. We were going to separate the recreation from the parks. And I guess I was just, and Mr. Flory gave me some insight on maybe some of the planning that's gone forth already on this, and I just thought I'd bring it up so we could get a little more detailed information on where that's going.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. Hopefully I'm talking loud enough. So we have the Park and Rec. A number of years ago, just since we got a little time, I'll give you a little background on it. So years ago, I think Nelson can attest to this, he was on the Parks and Rec Board many years ago as a 7-member body. And at some point here in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, whatever it was, we've changed that from a 7-member group down to a 5-member group. And we still, like a lot of these boards and commissions, still have a difficult time getting interested persons to serve on these groups. And so while that board is a 5-member board, we've not had 5 members on it for quite a while. I'd have to defer to someone else on that. Last time we had all seats occupied on that board. So we've had 4 for quite a while there. On that group of 4, we have 3 members whose terms are going to be expiring this coming June 30th. We have term limits on that board. So 2 members of that current group of 3 there would be precluded from serving an additional term. So we would be down to 1 member who has a year to go and 1 member who would be eligible for reappointment. And I know just, you've worked with Nelson for a long time. I know he has in particular reaches out a lot to try to get people interested. The clerk puts stuff out in the newsletter on the website, and we just have a difficult time, not just with that board, but with most all of the boards. Planning and Zoning Commission is running at a low number right now, and Board of Adjustment is not full. I think maybe the only one really running at capacity is the Library Board of Trustees. But we've had just a difficult time getting people to fill those. So I shared with Mike, we were talking about this, I gave him a couple of thoughts on it. One idea being, we're at a 5-member board, you could drop that down to 3 members. As Mike mentioned, we've had a realignment in staffing with the Park and Rec Department, where we have much more of a paradigm where we have a Parks Division and then a Recreation Division, with the Recreation Division being operated really under the auspices of the Wellness Director. But again, that person then still makes reports back to the Park and Rec Advisory Board. The same thing with Jim for the Parks Department, making park updates to the Park and Rec Advisory Board monthly there as well. So that's one concept there, is to, if you would like to, for your consideration, think about going from 5 members to 3. Might be appropriate for that board. The boards that we have by law are the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, the Library Board of Trustees. The Park and Rec Advisory Board is not a board or a commission that we're required by law to have. So that's a discretionary group. Some communities have that as an elected board. Many do not. So Mason City, for example, has an elected Park and Recreation Board. We do not. Ours is a purely discretionary body. You can have it, you don't have to have it. And in cases where you don't have it, those department heads typically report at council meetings like some of the other department heads that we have, instead of having a separate board to make a report to. So that was one thought. Another thought, I think also, given the realignment that we have in the department with the staff that we have today, I think there's a lot of positive energy among the board members that are there now, a lot more excitement, enthusiasm than I think probably has been there previously about wanting to be on the board and wanting to serve. And I think they see opportunities maybe to do more things that are really a direct result of some of the staffing that we've added here. And I think I can't say enough positive about Adam, Mary Jo, Seth, Big Jim. These guys are just doing a great job for for the department there. So, so I recognize that, but again, it is a board. I would, and for Nelson, I would have, it would be a daunting task for him to try to find 5 members. With 3 going off in June, 2 not able to serve, you're going to have to look for 3 more members. That's going to be difficult. So that was just, again, Mike and I had this conversation, and those were some of the ideas that he and I talked about. So I just throw it out for the greater good. I'd be interested to hear what everybody has to say about that. So thanks.
Comments?
I would have a comment on that, Scott, since we're in a position to simplify everything. Why not let this thing just dissolve on out and try it without a park board? Because you can't call it Park and Rec anymore, because recreation's not part of it. And just let this one, we can always bring it back if there is a huge need. And I applaud anybody that served on it through past and present, but I think that Mr. Mayor said it in our last workshop. All these items that we're talking about today, he said back then, we're in a 5-year period. We've got some growing pains. Now we've changed the dynamics of this. Let's simplify the process. Got to eventually come to the council anyway. I would before, let's let it dissolve on out, and dissolve it. What, July 1st, is that the cutoff date, something like that? That's my thoughts.
Well, we've got a different organization change here completely, and it will continue on that way. Once again, back in the archives, you'll find that at one time there was just a park board, and it was consisted of 5 citizens, and their primary charge was, yes, to check up on the various parks, but also they had a nursery of trees growing down where Clear Creek is at the present time, and that seemed to be their major focus. And then the city council at that time decided to have a recreation director, and I believe Mr. Jerry Moss was the first one that they had. And at that time, then he or they felt together that there should be a 7-member board, and that's how all that got put together. Well, now we're kind to go back where, you know, parks is here, recreation is here, and keep in mind that all of our departments in a town of 7,500, you all have to work together, or it doesn't work. And you know, I do believe at this point in time that with Adam now being the new director of the Wellness Center and Mary Jo being the new director of recreation for the Wellness Center and the community, that basically the inside and the outside of things, that we can communicate very, very well together without having that board. So I think it's a good point. Take it back, discuss it more further, the goods and the bads, and how does this affect the overall quality of the city in general. And certainly, folks, we are a recreation town. I mean, that's, you know, we always have said for many times that tourist and visitor, those are our economic engines, so to speak. We don't have any smokestacks. Scott said that eons ago and still says. Tourism drives us. Recreation drives us. And the connections that we have are still very, very good. So let's take a look at that and come back later.
I don't necessarily have the rich history that some of these others do with that board, but it does sound like a good idea with the splitting of the Parks and Rec to potentially look at that as well. If it's a board that's hard to fill constantly and a challenge, then I think that would be a good possibility as well. Yeah.
And as you said, Scott, we have plenty of time, right? The board members that are going off are not until July, so we have several months to kind of evaluate the options that you and the mayor described. So, thank you.
over the last few years, we've added quite a bit of staff at the city level for different things that involve these two things. So I guess we've got more people that are responsible for both the recreation and the park, and they report directly to Scott and the mayor, and they get the job done. And many times when a big issue comes up, the Parks and Rec Board kind of gets caught in the middle, and they have meetings with hearings and people with different opinions and quite a bit of emotion. And ultimately, from what I understand, the council ends up making the final decision if it gets to that level anyway. So, you know, that's another consideration in my mind. You know, why put them through something like that? So, anyway.
It's always been an advisory board. It's never been the decision-making for the community. That always comes back to the city council.
Yep, and that's
Any other comments? Thank you. 7, discussion regarding Main Avenue boat ramp, Main Avenue dock, and North Lakeview Drive. Both council member Mike Callahan and Gary Hugie will lead that. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. Last summer, I had occasion to go through the area down there that is described in this line item on a daily basis. Some of you are aware I enjoy bicycling, and typically some part of my bike ride amounted to going through there. Especially on weekends, it's wall to wall down there in the summer. All parking spots are usually filled, many times with very large vehicles that stick out into the road a few feet beyond the parking space. There is a huge amount of traffic on a Saturday or Sunday of boat launching, and many times this boat launching will have several truck trailer combinations waiting, and it becomes a big challenge to navigate an automobile through there. I guess we're lucky that we haven't had many mishaps, but the other thing you might notice if you go through there on a very busy day, there's a giant amount of pedestrian traffic walking across from the park side to the seawall side. And that adds to the consternation of what's going on down there. So Scott and I have had some discussion, and Gary, on the fact that we probably need to make some alteration of either traffic flow or parking or boat ramp traffic in the summer down there. Now, that's one part of this discussion. The other part, which I'm not sure is, yeah, there it is. Before we run out of time here, I definitely want to bring up the dock. 2 years ago, the good citizens of Clear Lake contributed through tax money $94,000 to have a state-of-the-art dock at the end of Main. And it's a beautiful structure. It's lighted. It just really shows off the area down there. But my thought and my understanding when we put that thing in is it was for the citizens of Clear Lake and boating, whether they wanted to come across the lake and tie up and do something downtown or pick someone up or something like that. Well, a year ago, a little over that, we adopted a dock ordinance that suggested commercial activity be limited to one boat launch at a time. Once again, I was down there many, many, many times this summer, and that was constantly violated by one of our commercial rental agencies. I've got evidence of sometimes at least 4 of their boats tied up at a time. And the other thing that seemed to bother me, it seemed like they were trying to push the envelope on this by tying up a boat at the wooden dock by the Lady of the Lake that, as far as I know, has never been meant for boat tie-up. My understanding is it's always been a fishing dock. Now, we weren't smart enough to include that in our ordinance, I guess. So, had we tried to do something about that, I think it might have got thrown back in our face. But where I'm going with this, I would recommend we amend our ordinance and put no commercial activity. You know, the other commercial users have spent lots of money to have places on the lake to rent their boats. One has not. And, I mean, they're taking advantage of a situation that, in my mind, wasn't meant for that. So, anyway, that's a lot, and I'll get off the mic and see what anybody else has to say.
Other comments, Council?
Well, Mike, you must have read my notes before you talked, because you covered everything pretty darn well. What I'd like to add to it is the maintenance on this dock is getting quite expensive. Most of you don't know this, but we're under the impression that Pierce was going to do all the welds again free this year. We learned last night that Jim sent an email to Scott and I. They sent us a bill, but they took 50% off. A bill of $2,400, so we're $1,200 more out of our pocket. We're approaching right now close to $5,000 for maintenance on this dock every year, and it could grow even to be more. Jim can tell you more about the damage on the dock than I can. The only thing I'd like to add to what Mike's comments are, with all the congestion down there, and you are lucky we didn't have a pedestrian hurt down there. We had rollerbladers, skateboarders, bicycles, mom and pop in their golf carts down there, people doing U-turns right there in the boat ramp. It's quite congested for a small area. I would like the council to instruct our administration to get a hold of RDG on board and see if they can give us some insight and solutions for this particular area down there, if that requires a traffic change, parking change, whatever. And I would like to see that get started as soon as possible. But it's up to the council, of course. I think it warrants a study being done down there. That's all I have to add.
Thanks. I did just a few comments on both of those. The area we're talking about is probably within the city of Clear Lake the most visited spot that we have. That's why we are presently now looking at the seawall and putting a lot of effort into how to bring that back to the standard that it was close to 1936 when it was built. Now, you aren't going to be perfect with it, but we're spending a lot of time and money in making sure that that is stable, and certainly it's not going to go away, but to make it look where there has been some damage done to it. It's a key area. I don't care what time of the year it is, nor if it's 20 below or 120 above, heaven forbid. There are people that go down there at noon, not necessarily get out of their cars or trucks, and trucks I need to come back to, but they'll sit there and stare at the lake, underscore the, for probably their whole lunchtime. It draws people to it. As a result of that, not to meander off the way here, but federal, state, local, county, and private money up to and beyond 23 million has been put in that lake for people to use or watch. That's a lot of bucks. Without Clear Lake, the lake itself, this would be a different town. So we're talking several things here. Congestion, I agree. For the 3 months. Yeah, there's 12 in the year. For 3 months, not that you didn't know that, you know, it is congestion. And with the extra long bed pickups that we get now, you're lucky to get one car through there, let alone two. So, yeah, the congestion is there. I agree, for that length of time. The same is true with the boat issue. It's a short amount of time there. Not only are we talking recreation here, and also the beautiful vision of the lake. I've seen more sunsets in Facebook than anybody, I think, and they're beautiful and they're nice, but it's also economic. You can't throw out the economy with regard to this particular area. We worked hard 20 years ago, or whenever it was, 15, to make sure that we had a number of retail businesses up and down Main Street. I think today, within the last few months anyway, there isn't an open window from here on down to where the boat approach is. You know, hallelujah, that's wonderful. That's what we're all about. The small town Norman Rockwell look, and people come by droves. You've heard me say I look at license plates. Who's here today? So you've got a couple of issues here. I agree the congestion is bad. And it may also be bad on the approach, water approach. You know, we've talked about monkeying with that. I do not think we can get away with removing that, certainly, from that. That's been there since Dickerson and Hewitt, and we can't, you know, take that out of there. I think the economic issue is big. We thrive on that. Is that the only place? No, it's not. But it's a key place. And there are other places where you can rent boats. And therefore, renting boats is all right. It's how the process goes about, I think, is what we're talking about. Now we got to be careful that we don't take our own brains and spot it on a particular issue with regard to that. Let's look at the broader picture of what we're all about as town. Crab's 2 cents.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, if I could just add to that, I agree there's a congestion issue, but I think it reflects the success we've really had in the last few years where we have an increasing number of people coming to town. And again, I think that reflects the work of our chamber and just the great job that the city does. And so, you know, that creates some ancillary issues like congestion, and I think that's fine that we discuss that and see if there's a way to alleviate that, particularly if there's safety issues that are involved with that. In terms of the dock issue, am I correct that the annual maintenance cost, Gary mentioned some cost with that, wouldn't that be true with a wooden dock as well? Yeah, and we budget for that. Right. Yeah, so I guess my view is that I think it's, as the mayor stated, it's very important that we think about the tourism dollars, the people that use that dock, and I've always been in favor of incidental commercial use on that dock, and I think it's important that we preserve that. So, thank you.
Any other comments? I do think the study might be worth putting some dollars toward.
Okay, yeah, I think Gary and I talked about that one day, and I mentioned to him, we've had RDG do some work downtown, and it might be easy enough for them, I guess, to take some of the previous work that they've done and some of the downtown planning documents that they put together, and maybe have them take a look at that. We were talking, I think, specifically about that North Lakeview area, but have them take a look at that area in terms of the traffic flow and the boat ramp and the parking, and is it working as well as it should be or could be, and maybe give us some suggestions or ideas on how it might improve. And I don't know what those would be, but I can certainly reach out to them and ask them for a proposal on developing some concepts and recommendations if that's what everybody's interested in.
Head nod on that? Proceed.
All right, well, I'll reach out to them. We'll try to get something back here. Be probably a pretty good time over the winter to delve into that and look at that area and come back with some suggestions.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Shall we move on to number 8?
Well, I guess I'm still up in the air about, are we going to do anything different with the movement solutions? Or is that a dead item? I mean, you talked about the traffic study. That didn't come up. I mean, I would have to guess, at the very least, that if they're launching, no matter what the order, 8 boats a day off there to people that are renting them and not skilled boat drivers, every once in a while, on a windy day, they're going to make a pretty hard landing. And I mean, I guess if we're going to allow commercial activity, maybe we should try to get some money out of that deal. I mean, everybody else on the lake that has a boat on the lake pays significant dollars to have that boat on the lake, even if it's one of the city docks or if it's one of the marinas. I mean, I don't know if any of you have a boat at a marina, but there's some pretty good cash that comes out of your pocket. And we seem to have an operation that the access to the lake is free, and one of the main reasons it's free is because of their use of the city dock. So at the very least, if we aren't going to alter our ordinance, I sure would like to have a sign up that said no boat tie-up on the fishing dock. I mean, I watch a few old guys go down there try to fish, and it's tough to fish with a 27-foot pontoon tied up in front of you. And then beyond that, I don't know. We need more enforcement if we're going to stick with our current ordinance. So I guess I would like to at least see if anyone else besides Gary agrees with me on this and try to move forward on something.
Yeah, Mike, I'm just going to make one comment. I don't understand why the city has to provide boat ramp, property, and parking, valuable parking, absolutely, take up for a business. To me, it's not right. It needs to be addressed.
Dana, you got a comment?
Yes, I was just going to say, I believe it's definitely time for further discussion. We had discussed it with the owner of the boat company earlier in the year, and it seemed like things were going to work out well. And from what Mike's saying, it didn't work out to what was agreed upon, and I think it'd be a good time to have further discussion. I don't know what the solution is. So not only is it time for further discussion, I would be more interested in finding out what is the solutions. More than one, there's got to be some solution to what is going on there. And if there isn't, then we just need to be able to move on. Because I think if we don't have a solution, it's going to continue to happen. And like other things that happen, sometimes we just have to say it's okay and go forward. And how that discussion takes place, I'm not sure. I know that business owner is gone for the winter. It's hard to wait till the spring and do something in the spring when we're trying to do something over the summer. So I think as a council, we need to have some further discussion pertaining to that item as well.
I would agree that little fishing dock, there shouldn't be a huge boat on that. I didn't know that was happening. That's not a part, but we do have an ordinance, and that if things are to change, that ordinance would have to be changed or modified or dropped or whatever you want to do with it. That certainly is a part of that. And then comes the enforcement of it. How is that enforced? How can it be enforced, that particular ordinance, if that's the route? So perhaps some discussion, Dana, is warranted on that. Further down analysis of it anyway. Perhaps, I don't know, whether RDG.
I think you're open, I think Mike
Yeah.
is open for a little discussion today.
Yeah, well,
Let's see what RDG kind of comes back with a solution to. They may have an idea, but let's get them on board and as quickly as
Yep.
possible and get some.
Right.
I think one idea that when this debate originally came up, one of the ideas that I put forward was that we negotiate a private mortgage agreement. I think, Scott, you had actually brought that up prior to my bringing it forward, if I remember that correctly. Because with something like that, you can control or negotiate issues related to insurance, maintenance cost, parking, any number of issues. And so I think that was, again, one possible thing that we had talked about and that we might look at in the future as a possible solution. Thank you.
Anything else?
well, I mean, if we go that direction, I think it still comes down to enforcement. Because this individual started out complying, but as the summer went on and things got busier, and I've got all kinds of snapshots on my cell phone if you want photographic
No, I
evidence.
would agree with you, Mike. I would concur. I think enforcement is an important component because we do have an ordinance in place, so I would completely agree with that.
Any other comments? Thank you. Under other business, update on Woodford Wheeler properties, Scott and Creighton.
Yeah, I'll just, Craig's going to talk about the more important item there, I guess, the money that we're receiving from that program. But about 7-8 months ago, we purchased the Woodford property, and Mike asked me just for a quick kind of update on that one. So we've not done anything with the architect that we hired for that. We've been working with them on the South 15th Street project. If you recall, back about 7-8 months ago, we entered into an agreement with Bergel and Cram to do professional services for both South 15th Street as well as the Woodford process. So the Woodford process, we kind of put on the slow burner, so to speak. We're using it to store some playground equipment for the South 15th Street project over the winter. We had a time-sensitive purchase date on that, so it's been in there for a while. And then, of course, we had the new library director come on, so we wanted to give that person an opportunity to sort of get their feet on the ground and get an understanding of Clear Lake and the board and the library physical structure itself and the needs of that before we started in with the process. So I do expect we'll probably start that process in the next month or so with Bergel and Cram to start that strategic planning process with the library board of trustees and the council and the new library director, and try to position that for something that for strategic planning that gets some concepts developed and something maybe in the spring to summertime. But in terms of the building itself, we'll probably be working on at some point demolition plans for that. But I'd say probably try to gear that up maybe for the spring, summertime, on the demolition there. So.
Creighton, anything?
Nothing on that. Nothing on the Woodford property, but are we ready to go to the next item? Are you ready to go to the next item, or do you have something else on the list?
Is there a next item?
An American Rescue Plan Act.
Oh, American Rescue Plan.
All right. Well, for the American Rescue Plan, we have received our first round of funding, so we received that back in August. The amount that we got in the first round was $560,000, and we will receive a second round of funding a year after that, so approximately August of 2022, we'll get another $560,000. So our total American Rescue Plan Act funding will be
just over $1.1 million. That funding was determined on a per capita basis, and we have until December 31st, 2024 to have those funds obligated. So to make a decision on what we're going to use all those funds for. And then all the funds have to be actually used by December 31st, 2026. We have already set up a fund, so we have a separate fund for the monies that we've already received and the money that we'll received in 2022. Also, all of our expenditures will come out of that fund so we can track all of those, and there are some reporting requirements that we will comply with as well. There are 4 separate categories that these funds can be used for. So there are specific categories. You're not just given the money and anything that you could be used from a governmental perspective, but there are 4 specific categories here. So the first one is to respond to the COVID-19 health emergency. The second category is for premium pay for eligible workers who performed essential work. So those within the city of Clear Lake who would be eligible for that. Replace lost revenue. So revenues that we were anticipating in receiving either in 2020 or 2021 and beyond that have been reduced due to this, which we don't have a lot of those. The pool is one that we didn't have revenues in 2020 because it was closed. A little bit in hotel motel tax in 2020, but most of the areas like property tax and that and bigger buckets, we did not see a decline, so there wouldn't be many opportunities there. And then the fourth category is for investments in broadband, water, or sewer projects. So that's one that you'll hear about. It's available for infrastructure, but there are these 3 specific categories that are available. Again, broadband, water, or sewer projects. So that's where we stand here, and I don't know if we want to open that up for discussion, but that's just kind of an overview of the funding that we've received and will receive and what we can use it for.
Sounds like a lot of potential opportunities there. It's great. Any other comments? Quite a few comments from the old man here. Coming up real quick, as Scott said, is our fiscal year 23 budget time, and we'll be in that from a month from now till, if not sooner, a month from now till the 1st of March. And as a result of that, I want this council and staff to begin to think hard about what's the bigger, broader picture for this community. I think we're all blessed to live in this community. It's the greatest 7,500 population. We've dropped a couple, I guess. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, that exists. There isn't any better. Strategic planning is very, very important. And that's about what we're to do in a month or so for fiscal year 23. What does this town need in a broader perspective that we don't presently have? I want us to, when possible, and we can always take time to do this, visit our staff. We've got the best staff around. Lots of changes have occurred recently. Look at Public Works. Back here, Jeremy Kornberg sits. He's a goer. Go talk to him. Jeremy, what do you need? What needs do you have? What would you like to see us do for you? And vice versa. Go to the water department, same thing. Jim, doing a fine job in our park. Jim, what do you need? Seth, what do you need? Those guys seem to be working very, very well together. Recreation, Adam, just started. Sits with us every day back there. Mary Jo, in 10 minutes, Scott and I are going to interview another person for that particular area. That's exciting, very exciting. The lake. Get to Jim Shawley. Jim, what are you doing? How are you making this a better lake in our area than it is now? Are we maintaining what we had done a number of years ago? That lake is key. I told you earlier, people go down there and almost worship it every noon hour while they eat their lunch. You know, it's a key part of this town. New librarian just recently. How many of you have been in that library lately and met our new librarian and her staff? People from out of town come in, this is the greatest library for this size town I've ever been in. And some of us don't even know about it. Go to our PD. Pete, Mike, what are the needs? What are your requests from us? And what do we think you guys should be doing? Fire department the same way. City administrative staff, there ain't none better than what we've got right in this building. You take our office staff, Aaron, Brittany, Hope, and dear Jennifer, who keeps us all glued together in there. Creighton, our new director of finance, is not new anymore. Now we can start hollering at him. He's not new, but he's, you know, the fit here is very, very good. Guy with a last name of Florian starts with Scott. You know, what do you say? I mean, look at what we have over these last 15 years. And for him, it goes down to 18 to 20, somewhere in there. For me, I've only seen that the last 15. But look what we've gotten. I can still remember the remarks when McKesson said they're coming here. And I know we get terribly arrogant about that. But it was fantastic. You know, look at the rest of going on around town. Look out in the northeast corner of Interstate 35 and 18. Look all along the corridor here. Look at downtown. Things just don't happen. You've got to have somebody at the top that's working with people in Des Moines, working with people across the nation in development. That's critical. Not to be arrogant, but I think we have the best city administrator for a town of 7,500 that there is. And, you know, we can't forget that. We can't forget that. Small town, small number of people, always needing some more to do something. Blows up with tons of people for 3 months out of the year. Shrinks down to where we are now. Flexibility. Man, Pete must have a heck of a job doing that, you know. Pete, close this street. Pete, open this street. Pete, we've got 20,000 people coming in this weekend. Yeah, but I got people on vacation. What am I going to do? You know, we work it. We make it. We work very solidly with our Chamber of Commerce. We're together with them. We have business leaders in this town. Work solid with them. We own the golf course. We established, Scott, established the 501c3 with the surf. We own the land where Central Gardens is. We have contributed to the Art Center. I can go on and on. You aren't going to find any place better. Citizen support is the reason why. 80% voted for Clear Creek. 80% voted for a new fire station. 70% the new wellness center. You talk about citizen support, we've got it here. We work for them. And so proud to do that. Check over our comprehensive plan and the newer one that we're about to do. What does that look like? Where are we going? Above all, look in the mirror tomorrow morning and be thankful for the city that you live in. As John Papajohn said, a former resident out here on North Shore, and we heard him in Des Moines a while back with the 25th anniversary of the Papajohn Entrepreneurial Centers. His motto is PMA, Positive Mental Attitude. Look in that mirror tomorrow morning. Is that what I've got? Is that what you've got? with regard to this community. Hey, thanks for being here this morning. It's been a great session. Have a great day. Meeting adjourned.